This content is brought to you by Uphold, which makes crypto investing easy. I've been a user of Uphold since 2017. They're one of my go-to exchanges. You can buy, sell, and trade cryptocurrencies on Uphold. You can also trade precious metals and equities. They have 10 plus million users, 250 plus cryptocurrencies, and they're available in 150 countries. As with all exchanges, you can buy and sell on them, but I highly recommend you custody your own crypto, not your keys, not your coins. If you'd like to learn more about Uphold, please visit the link in the description. Welcome back to the Thinking Crypto podcast, your home for cryptocurrency news and interviews. With me today is Kristine Cranley, who's the Director of Business Development at the Texas Blockchain Council. Kristine, it's great to have you on.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be on your show.
Well, Kristine, there's a lot happening in Texas, and we're going to talk about Bitcoin mining, some bills that are out there. But first, I would love to get to know you a bit better. Tell us about yourself, where you're from, and where'd you grow up?
So I am a Texan. I graduated from Texas A&M University, and I have been in the Bitcoin space for about 2 years. I have a kind of winding journey to arrive here. So when I graduated from university, I went to New York City and I was doing kind of service work for a number of years, working with underprivileged women, especially those who found themselves in crisis pregnancy, and helping them to find the resources that they needed. Particularly, a lot of them wanted to give birth to their child and they felt like they didn't know how they were going to make that happen. And so we helped organize just different opportunities for them to be able to find the resources that they were looking for. And in that experience, I really developed a passion for financial education and financial freedom, because with those women, they had in their heart what they wanted to do, but they felt like it was impossible because they were so dependent on the finances of others. And so really kind of birthed this love in me for empowering people financially. So I did that for a number of years. And then I went to DC and I was studying for a while. And also got into commercial real estate. So I was doing commercial real estate property management for a number of years there until the pandemic shut us down. And I had an opportunity to flee back home to Texas, where I love to be. And when I arrived here, this was at the beginning of 2021, I had an opportunity to really remake myself. And I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to be talking about Bitcoin and what was going on with the economy. So I started an LLC called Noah's Bitcoin to just educate anybody who would listen about sound money and what was happening with the economy. And oddly enough, I got some calls about, please come and talk to us about it. Because back then, that was when, that was right before Bitcoin and the altcoins started running up. And so people were very interested. And then along the way, a registered investment advisor firm heard of what I was doing and invited me to come and get on board with them to study for my Series 65, because they were one of the only firms in Texas actually offering cryptocurrency exposure for their clients. So did that and worked there for a number of years, year and a half, until recently when I got on board with the Texas Blockchain Council to serve their mission with making Texas the jurisdiction of choice for Bitcoin mining and blockchain innovation.
That's awesome. And what was your first encounter with Bitcoin? How did you come across it? Did a friend tell you about it? Did you see it on the news? And what was your aha moment? When did it click for you?
I was listening to different voices about what was going on in the economy. I was very interested in Wall Street Silver. I still like them, actually, and what they were putting out regarding sound money and just what's going on in the economy. And so along the way, I started listening to the Bitcoin voices, and it just, a light came on for me, 21 million fixed supply, 19 million already been mined, and just the antithesis of what we're seeing with a centralized control of currency and store of value where they can print it at will and devalue the work of all of us. And so comparing that, and also just the decentralized aspect of Bitcoin. You know, I was watching what happened with the Canadian truckers and how they went to their capital to voice their concerns about certain mandates that they were receiving. And in response, their bank accounts got shut off. And so just looking at how with Bitcoin, it's trustless, it's peer-to-peer, it's not controlled by anyone or entity. And so you can't do that with Bitcoin. So all those things, it was a confluence of different happenings that just kind of just put a light bulb off in my mind about the beauty of this innovation. And I'm a bit of an evangelist at heart in that if I am convicted about something, I can't stop talking about it. So that's why I started just ravenously consuming everything I could about the topic, and then doing my best to make it bite-sized for people that didn't have time really to do all the research that I was doing, but just kind of wanted a bite-sized nugget about why this is important.
For sure. And, you know, some of the points you brought up there, we're kind of at a tipping point where the TradFi world and the fiat currency machine, which has existed for a long time, it's almost at a crossroads where it's collapsing, and we're seeing bank runs, and the problem, it just repeats every, 8 to 10 years, right? You have your up moments, and then the Fed has to come in and keep printing. So when does it end? And then there's this solution of Bitcoin and hard money and the blockchain where you can verify and you can't replicate it and you can't create more of it outside of the respective blockchain. It's such an interesting time to be alive with all these things happening.
It really is. And I don't know if you're experiencing this, but you know, I've been trying to tell family and loved ones about it for a number of years, because just concerned about just the way things are with the fractional reserve system. And there's really no bank that could survive a real bank run. And so talking about that with people, not to scare them and not to try to move out of the dollar, but just to think about diversification and having a little here or there. And, you know, when it's your family, sometimes it just, whatever. This is her new thing. But now they're contacting me and sending me stuff. Have you seen this? Are you aware of this? And I'm like, didn't I send you this information like a year ago? But it is interesting. I think that we're seeing an amplification right now, and people really starting to wake up and realize what, you know, the money in my bank account is not fully insured, and there's a possibility that it could just go away. And, you know, again, one of the things I love about Bitcoin so much, the whole idea of monetary value, is that we're looking for a place to store the value of our labor. And we've given our life to our work. You know, that's time we could have spent with family, but we've spent it in whatever our profession is, laboring, and then we've tried to transfer that into something that will hold the value of our labor. And I think more and more people are seeing this dilemma of, with inflation, it's like a piggy bank with a hole in the bottom, right? And so you stored that up for retirement or whatever, your child's college education, and it's worth less and less and less. And so really kind of waking up to the whole question of what is money and what is a store of value and what are my options to be able to preserve that which I've really spent my life in trying to secure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like a great paradigm shift taking place, and it's people eventually they start recognizing what's happening as the traditional financial pillars start to collapse around them. And then, you know, they see Bitcoin and crypto as a solution. Tell us about the Texas Blockchain Council, maybe a bit of its history and what's its mission.
Absolutely. So the Texas Blockchain Council is a nonprofit industry organization in Texas, working to make Texas the jurisdiction of choice for Bitcoin mining, blockchain innovation. And so we're a member organization. And we've been working for a number of years now, and we have a couple different pillars. So we do a lot of policy work. In Texas, the legislature only meets once every 2 years and for a very short window. And so we've been working for a number of years to prepare several different policy initiatives, and our members participate in that. So that's one of the benefits of membership, is to be able to participate in those industry working groups with the policy. But then we also do education. I'm working right now on some continuing education courses for different industries. So lawyers and landmen and CPAs and that. So trying to educate on the industry. And then also we're a business development organization. So we're at the service of our members, getting them in front of the people that they want to be in front of. And so we have internal Slack channels and just different opportunities, business building opportunities. And it's a tiered membership, so some of our higher level ones, we have a lot of the miners that are our members, and we coordinate between them and ERCOT. So we're calling us during the winter storm. Hey, looks like there's a few people that are still on. Can you help us get them off? And then, just getting them again in front of the people that they want to be in, whether that's lawmakers or employees or, whatever it is they're looking for. We help get them where they want to go.
I wish every state would have a council like what you guys have going, because I feel states have to lead a lot of this, because the federal government is still in a mess as it relates to different government agencies, SEC, CFTC, and this agency and that agency. And I feel the states really have to take the lead here. And I've been very happy with what's happening in Texas. After China banned Bitcoin mining, a lot of miners came to the US. A lot went to Texas. I've spoken to the folks at Riots and a bunch of others. And they've talked a bit about the economic benefits of being in Texas and creating jobs and so forth. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Absolutely. Well, Texas is, I always like to say, match made in heaven with Bitcoin mining and energy, because obviously Bitcoin is dependent on energy. That's what goes into it. And, that's, people argue about, well, should it be really using energy? But anything of value uses energy to produce it, right? And so Texas is unique and ideal because we are an unregulated grid. And so what that means is we don't have a fixed price all over the state. We're competing in different areas for price. And so you can see there's areas that the price will drop very low. And part of the problem that they experience is they're not close to the big cities. And so particularly we see this with wind and solar. So Texas is second only to California in renewables, wind and solar. We have a lot of sun and a lot of wind, but when the sun's blowing and when the sun's shining and the wind's blowing, that's great. There's a whole lot of energy being produced, way more than you can ever get to market. But then when it's not, the wind's not blowing and the sun's not shining, then there's not enough, and you need to go back and depend on the dependable loads, the dispatchable loads, the fossil fuels. And so there's a desire to increase wind and solar in the state, but the only way to do that economically is to have buyers of last resort that are able to take up residence close to where the energy source is, because it just doesn't travel very far. And so Bitcoin miners have been able to take advantage of those wind and solar opportunities in Texas. And what it does is it financially incentivizes more build out, because if you cannot sell the power that you're producing, then you're not going to build out anymore. So we have that with wind and solar, but with all types of energy. So we have stranded natural gas mining going on in Texas, where you're probably aware when you're drilling for oil, natural gas is a waste product. It's a byproduct. And if you have pipeline that's built out to where you are, then you could just sell that back to the grid and make money on it. But a lot of these places, it's not economical to build a pipeline out there. And so what they do is they just flare it or burn it off, or vent it, which is even worse. But with the Bitcoin miners, they're able to come and say, hey, why don't you sell us this gas at a steeply discounted price? And so we're able to take advantage of that wasted energy that would be like literally burned away. And then just also with the oil and gas, we're an abundant energy state. And one of the things that I think sometimes people lose when they think about Bitcoin mining is using all this energy in Texas. Well, the only way to incentivize build out of the grid is the price signals, right? And so if there's not enough people to purchase what you're producing, then you're stuck at that level. So Bitcoin mining has come in and, as I said, become the buyers of last resort. And because of that, we are helping to make the grid even more robust.
Yeah, that's amazing. And on multiple levels. One, you're reducing the waste of that energy, like you're saying, that escapes, and rather than the flare or whatever it may be, you monetize that energy, and it can have benefits to the folks who are producing the energy and trying to get it out of the ground or whatever it may be, and in different ways, and creating an asset that can be another investment or store of value like gold and so forth, or another form of money. So multiple benefits there. Now, there's a bill that came out, SB 7, or I should say 1751. Tell us about that. It's been dubbed the anti-Bitcoin mining bill. What was the origins, and what is it trying to achieve?
So this bill there's 3 different objectives to the bill. One of them is to just request that all Bitcoin miners that are over 10 megawatts register with ERCOT. And we at the Texas Blockchain Council have no problem with that. We support transparency with ERCOT. And the truth is, ERCOT already knows. And there's also other bills right now that would do that same thing. So that's one, the part that we find non-objectionable. The other 2 are deeply discriminatory. So there are tax incentives, Chapter 312, that are offered to different large industries to incentivize them to come to a rural community. And so what it equates to is, if you bring your industry here to our community, then we're going to give you tax abatement on your property taxes over 10 years. And so it would get rid of Chapter 312 only for Bitcoin miners. So only because they don't like the end use of the electricity that they're using. So deeply discriminatory. The third part of the bill has to do with the grid balancing services that ERCOT has. So what ERCOT does, and ERCOT is the council, Electricity Reliability Council of Texas, that helps manage our grid. And what they do is, there's times, for instance, in times of emergency, where you're going to need more power because it's the middle of a storm, everybody's got their heat on, or it's the middle of the summer and everyone's got their AC on. And you can't ask everybody to shut down, right? So if you're a hospital, you can't shut down your business. Most people can't shut down their business in times of emergency. And then households, you can ask them, but there's no way to control it. So what ERCOT does is they have these ancillary services, these demand response services, where they pay to be able to control that. And so if you're a large flexible load, then you can be incentivized to have ERCOT be able to take control of your production when they need to. And so normally Bitcoin miners, they can be very responsive to price. So if the price is really high, they might shut down anyway. But ERCOT wants some that they are in control of. And so they pay money in order to have the privilege of being able to shut you down during a storm and deliver that power back to the grid. And in the last winter storm that we had, this wasn't just those services, but amongst the whole Bitcoin community, we shut down 96% and we put back power equivalent to 1.5 million homes in Texas. So that's the power of a large flexible load that's able to turn off. So going back to your question, the third part of the bill, what it does is says only Bitcoin mining can only contribute 10% to those ancillary services. The rest has to be provided by someone else. And what that does, in effect, is it's going to increase rates for Texans because the Bitcoin miners are able to do it the quickest. They can shut off in an instant, and it doesn't damage their business. And so what they're able to do is they're competing for those services by saying, hey, we'll do it at this price. And what they're doing is driving down the price and winning the bid from some of the more legacy industries that used to take advantage of those incentives. So what this bill would do is say, Bitcoin mining, only 10%, the rest has to be provided by someone else, which in essence makes the grid less stable and makes rates for those ancillary services go up.
See, this is why I wanted to have you on, because those details are so crucial, right, for folks to understand the dynamic of what's happening here. Because from the outside, when you're reading headlines, it's hard to navigate and get the behind the scenes how this all works. So that's a great explanation. And then you had a recent testimony before the committee regarding this. Can you tell us about how that went? Are folks receptive to the pushback that are getting from you and the other Bitcoin mining advocates?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's going around Twitter. It was kind of a funny thing because we testify frequently at these policy initiative hearings. As a matter of fact, we have about 8 different bills that found a sponsor. The Texas Blockchain Council helped to put forth. And so it wasn't the first time that the Texas Blockchain Council was at one of these hearings. But this is a bill that is against our industry, where the other ones are in support of them. And the way that these bills work, it's a little committee hearing. There's 10 people there. And then if it gets out of committee, then it goes to vote in the Senate. And then if it passes there, it'll go to the House and through the committee, vote in the House, and then it has to make it through the governor's desk. So with this bill, we learned about it the day it was filed, and we already had a war room with our Bitcoin miners and said, do you want us to try and kill this quietly, or would you like us to make a big stink about it? And we, at that time, decided, well, we can use the leverage that we have and hopefully get our allies to just sit on it so that it never becomes law, and then we don't have to talk about it much. But the news got a hold of it, and so it kind of blew it out of proportion in some ways. But so I was speaking in Miami the night before, and I was going back and forth about whether or not to be there. And I decided at the last minute to fly in early in the morning. And I was just going to watch Lee Bratcher, our president, kind of do his stuff. He does this all the time. And I was going to be there to support him. So I was a little bit sleep deprived, and I arrived at 1 a.m. and I got there and they were rushing through. They have several bills that they address in those hearings, and they were rushing through them. And so when I was there, nobody else was there yet. So Lee hadn't arrived yet. Pierre Rochard with Riot wasn't there yet. And so I was like, oh my gosh, there's nobody here. And Lee's like, why don't you sign us all up? And then why don't you go ahead and testify, just in case we're not there. So I signed up, but I did not have prepared remarks like the rest of my coworkers did. So I just was listening to the points that they were making and trying to address some of them. So it wasn't my best, but it was just good to have voices there. So, and then happily the rest of the team arrived just in time. So we were all able to address the concerns, but unfortunately it did get voted out of that committee unanimously. And part of that, the dynamics in the Texas Senate are different than the dynamics in the Texas House. And the senators are very loyal to one another. They're around longer. And the sponsor of the bill felt strongly about it. And so, it was passed out of that. Nobody wanted to spend the political capital to oppose it. But at this point, we're still not so worried about it. There's lots of places along the way where it could get stalled. But that particular instance was that hearing. We testified, but it passed out. And next on Wednesday, it'll go to the Senate for a vote. We expect it to pass because that's just how the Senate is. But then once it gets to the House, it may actually be dead on arrival, or there's several different steps along the way that we can push back against it.
It's good to know that there's still layers and it has to go up and it could get stopped, and the fight is not over yet, even though it went through this committee. Okay, that's good. And on a larger scale, right? Bitcoin and crypto are facing some headwinds right now, specifically from the federal government, multiple government agencies coordinating. And yes, there's one aspect of protecting consumers and investors. Absolutely, stop the bad actors, the scammers. But at the same time, there seems to be an overreach where they're stifling innovation. And we are in a global competition where we're seeing Dubai and Hong Kong and all these countries are ramping up and they're putting together funding and they're attracting the entrepreneurs. And my worry is that the U.S. government's going to overreach here and force companies to leave. China banned Bitcoin mining. The miners came here to the United States, majority in Texas. North America, or the United States, depending on which way you want to look at it, has control of the hash power now, leading the world in Bitcoin mining. What is your take on all this? And I know that's a lot I just threw at you, but the position we're in right now, waiting for comprehensive regulations from the federal government.
Yeah, it's definitely something to be concerned of. Although it's also the reason that we focus so much on Texas, because half of it will be decided at the federal level, whether Bitcoin is a commodity or a security, and the other crypto projects, a commodity or security, the tax implications for that. But a lot is decided on the state level. And Texas has a very libertarian heart. We don't like to be told what to do too much by the centralized, the more federally, so sometimes it works in our favor. So Elizabeth Warren had reached out to ERCOT and demanded that we tell them what we're using our energy for. She actually specifically mentioned the Texas Blockchain Council and our president, Lee Bratcher. And the response from Texas was, look to your own grid, because, we have 17%, it was like renewables compared to your not 17%. We have 17 times more the renewables than Massachusetts has. And so, we will attend to our own affairs, and we recommend that you look to your own. But that is why, again, we are just a Texas organization. We focus on Texas, and there's a lot that can be done at the state level. And we focus our energies there, while all at the same time educating too, because there is a lot of misconception. And just recently, some articles came out from the New York Times, and it's the same old misconceptions. And Riot did a fantastic rebuttal to it. They even put a smog filter, they photoshopped the image to make it look smoggy. I mean, it was so insulting.
Propaganda
And
piece.
They didn't even say the right name of the city in the first line. So there is a big push because there's an agenda, right? And they want to push, their central bank digital currencies, and Bitcoin gets in the way of that because it's decentralized, and their green agenda and all that. And meanwhile, here in Texas, we've got more renewables than almost anyone, but we're just doing our thing with our free market, and we just want to be left alone to thrive.
Yeah, it's one. I knew that name Elizabeth Warren was going to pop up. She seems to be anti-crypto on every level, incorporating it into her campaign. And I wouldn't be surprised.
She always aligns with the big banks, even though she says she's for the people. She always ends up on the side of the big bank.
Exactly. And I wouldn't be surprised if Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger are behind that New York Times piece.
Yeah. Well, or even what we're going through here in Texas, right? Because a lot of those industries benefited quite a bit from those ancillary services. And now the new kid on the block is bidding down the price. And so you always have to follow the money. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what inspired this bill. We can guess, but if you follow the money, sometimes it leads to interesting places.
For sure. So what's on your 2023 roadmap as far as priorities for the council?
Excellent question. So first of all, our legislative session ends May 29th. So priority number one, we're going to kill this bill. And we would also, the reason we were going to do it quietly originally was because we have about 8 different bills that are in the House with our allies and working their way toward the Senate. There's a couple in particular that are really interesting: a right to hold your cryptographic keys anonymously if you own Bitcoin. And then one with, I was talking about flare mining, where you take down the flare and you're mining with it. We have a bill that would clarify that no severance tax is due if you're using the data box on site. So we'd love to see those passed, and we hope that the Senate doesn't oppose what we're doing, but we'll just see. We're trying to do this delicately and recognize, the senator that is putting it forth. She has good intentions and maybe not all the best information. So working on that. And then once the legislative session is over, we'll be gearing up. We helped facilitate Fort Worth, Texas, which is where I am right now, to become the first city in the United States to mine Bitcoin. And so because of that honor, we are going to be hosting a summit November 15th through the 17th here in Fort Worth. And on the first day of it, we're going to have an industry day so people can get certifications for, the lawyers and the CPAs, like I was speaking about earlier. And then also just showcase what's going on in Texas and offer it as a business networking opportunity. So working on that. And then we have other interesting projects going on. I think one of the most important things is to continue to facilitate good data and research. So we did a study last year about how many Texans own Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, and we're actually above the national average. So our results showed we were 29% of Texans. And surprisingly, more Democrats were likely to own it than Republicans, but a nice mix of people. And so those kind of data, so that we can show that Bitcoin miners are stabilizing the grid, that Bitcoin mining is driving down the prices. Because what we're seeing with some of these articles, they're putting out non-open source information that is not like, if we could actually look at their methods and see how they're doing it, we could very easily counter it. So we're going to be working on research to continue to bring data to what we're seeing of the benefits of Bitcoin mining in Texas.
Yeah, I love the education work that you guys are doing, because there's a lot of educating that's needed. There's a lot of misconceptions, as you mentioned. And even, in talking to different representatives and members of Congress and so forth, some get it and some are still struggling, and some are like, what is this? It's tough. I mean, it's a brand new technology. And I think the education aspect is so critical for folks to just understand what is happening so they make, informed decisions.
We would agree.
Now, you mentioned City of Fort Worth is actually mining Bitcoin. Is that right?
Yes. So we worked with some of our members to donate a couple ASIC machines and encourage them to plug it in for a 6-month pilot program. It was a big deal. And so we do that at the Texas Blockchain Council. We're working with a number of municipalities trying to help them to do this because, a lot of it just involves putting your toe in the water and seeing, wow, we're we're spending a little bit of energy and we're getting this on our balance sheet. And, this is, if you think into the future and you look at what places like El Salvador are doing, there's the possibility of getting rid of a lot of the taxes. If the city was using their resources to mine Bitcoin and then using that to develop roads or schools or what have you, there's real potential there, but it's a stretch for so many people, right? And so we're working on the education, but also partnering with different municipalities to help them make the first step and see if they like it or not.
As you said that, I was thinking, I believe it's Alaska. They have, because of oil, if I'm not mistaken, the surplus where you don't have to pay taxes and it's funded by the oil. I may be wrong. I think it's Alaska, but the idea is that you have this natural resource, so to speak, where you can fund the treasury and you don't have to tax people as much and you can pay for the infrastructure and all that.
Yeah. An interesting fact about Texas, we had a large surplus in our budget this year. I'm trying to, don't quote me on this here, saying it on camera. I think it was like 33 billion or something. Like it was an interesting thing to note that we are not spending beyond our means, and we're very open and looking for ways to reduce the tax burden on Texans, which is why we're growing so much, right? I think people are looking for places that are more livable as far as taxes goes. So a lot of innovation. And you mentioned innovation before. I want to make sure I do a shout out for this. So we, the Texas Blockchain Council, are partnering with the Digital Chamber of Commerce and the Satoshi Action Fund, launching our Don't Mess with Texas Innovation campaign. So people can go to it, don'tmesswithtexasinnovation.com, and click on the link. And even if you're not from Texas, you can have messages sent to, right now we're focusing on our senators. And then because the Senate vote is on Wednesday, and we're just actually looking for a couple senators to register a no vote. We don't expect it. We expect it to pass in the Senate, but then if it gets moving in the House and doesn't get sat on there, then we'll need people to contact the representatives as well. So anyway, but innovation, that's in Texas. We're all in, this is what we do here. We're the land of innovation and freedom. And so looking to help continue to keep Texas strong in that.
Yeah, I saw the website because I'm friends with the folks at the Chamber of Digital Commerce. I've actually had one of them on last week. So I'll put a link to that website, everybody, in the description. So definitely go check it out. Kristine, I got some wrap-up questions here for you before I let you go. First, if you could create your own metaverse, what would the theme be?
I do love to live in reality, but I think I was thinking about this. I think it would probably be what a world with a Bitcoin standard could look like, right? So when the zombie companies are not there because, any money you spend is money that you don't have anymore, right? Like what would happen to our wars if you had to spend your Bitcoin in order to fight them, which you're never getting back? And again, looking at what El Salvador is doing with their Bitcoin city. So I'm an educator at heart. So when I think about that question of what metaverse I'd like to live in, it'd be one that would educate me on reality so that I could live in the real world in a more robust and human way. And so, so what would a Bitcoin standard world look like?
Awesome. And I got some rapid fire questions here for you. Favorite food?
Beef.
Favorite musician or band?
Brooke Fraser.
Favorite movie?
Les Miserables. It's a musical. But...
Oh yeah. Well, they made a movie out of it too, right?
They did a great job with it. So yeah.
Favorite book?
Lord of the Rings.
Have you read the whole?
Many times.
Yeah.
In many different languages. I never get enough of it.
Oh wow. I've not gotten around to reading the books, but I love the movies. I watch it anytime it's on TV.
I'm an Audible girl, so I can walk and work in my house and listen, and I've probably listened to it 8 times.
Oh, wow. And what do you do for fun as a hobby or your pastime?
I love to walk, and I actually love to go to the zoo and just see all the creative creatures in the world. So
Awesome. Kristine, thank you so much for joining me today. Keep up the good fight. The crypto community is behind you guys for sure. And everybody go check out the website and fill it out. But thank you so much, Kristine.
thank you so much. You have a great day.